I told you so. After an hour, the sky turned completely black. The plane began to shake violently. The wind roared, it screamed. It wound my tail up in knots. Oh no, that wasn't the wind. That was me. I wind my tail when I'm nervous. I really should break the habit. Tia says it makes your fur fall out. I hope she's wrong. Have you ever seen a mouse with no fur? Let me tell you, it is not a pretty sight. Bouncer's voice interrupted my thoughts. Control tower, what's the deal with this weather? He shouted. The radio crackled. Tornado headed right for you, our voice screamed. Emergency! Everyone turned as pale as a ball of mozzarella. Well, everyone except me. That's because I was already pale. The blood had frozen under my fur the minute I'd stepped on board. A tornado is coming, announced Bouncer. I felt faint. I told you so, I squeaked. I told you that it was dangerous. Nose down in the deep blue waves. I helped Benjamin put on a life jacket. No one was talking. How unusual. Normally, you couldn't get the Stilton family to stop squeaking. Everyone stared worriedly at the sky. It grew darker and darker. The wind blew furiously. The plane lurched and swayed. Swish, swish, swish. I held on to Benjamin's tiny paw for dear life. Don't worry, little nephew, I whispered. We'll be just fine. I hope he couldn't hear my teeth chattering, or see my fur standing on end, or feel my paw trembling. Rat-munching rattlesnakes. I was scared silly. Suddenly, Bouncer pointed the plane's nose towards land. Hang on, he screamed. I'm going to try to make an emergency landing. The wind grew stronger and stronger. The waves grew closer and closer. Seconds later, a gust of wind sent the plane plunging into the deep waves. Glub, blub, blub, blub. The plane crashed into the sea, and with a loud splash, instantaneously, we began to sink. Glub, blub, blub, blub. We tried to open the door. It wouldn't budge. Then I remembered something I had read in one of my favorite books. In the book, the hero accidentally dives off a bridge. His car sinks underwater. The pressure is too strong for him to escape. He has to wait until the car goes completely under. Before long, the water had covered our plane. I pushed with all of my strength and the door opened. Isn't reading amazing? I took a deep breath. Then I grabbed Benjamin's paw and hurled myself out into the water. It was freezing. I started swimming. The water was darker than my mouth hole at midnight. I couldn't see my own fur in front of my face, but I could see bubbles. They were coming from my mouth. I followed them to the surface. We made it! I spluttered, giving Benjamin a hug. The entrap popped up next to me, but there was no sign of Bouncer. I looked around and spotted a small island not too far away. We swam to shore. Then we collapsed onto the sand. Water dripped down my whiskers. I was so tired, I couldn't move. That was a good thing, because I wanted to go, my sister, for bringing me on this nightmare vacation. Nothing can stop the Stilton family. The sun was about to rise. I was feeling hopeful. Then I heard someone sobbing. It was Trapped. What if we're trapped here forever? He moaned. I'll never be able to go to another mouse ball game again. I'll never see my friends. I'll never eat another cheddar melt at the all-you-can-eat cheese palace. Did I mention my cousin loves to eat and eat and eat? Thea rolled her eyes. Get a grip, Trap, she squeaked. We Stiltons never give up. Benjamin smiled. Aunt Thea's right, Cousin Trap, he nodded. Nothing can stop the Stilton family. With a sigh, Trap got a grip on himself. Then we twisted our tails together and shouted, Nothing can stop the Stilton family. We came up with chores. Trap was in charge of getting the food. Thea gathered wood to light the fire. Benjamin made little skirts out of palm leaves so we'd have something to wear. Our clothes were soaking wet, and I built a shelter under a coconut tree. It was a hard day. The sun roasted my fur. The wind tangled my whiskers. My paw sprouted 1,000 blisters. Well, okay, maybe not 1,000, but you can get the picture. It was hard work. I stared at the ocean. It looked so cool and inviting, but I was afraid. What if a shark attacked me? What if a jellyfish stung me? What if my grass skirt floated away? Just then something plopped onto my head. A second later there were more plops. Plop, plop, plop. The sky had filled with a swarm of birds. They looked just like seagulls. Squawk, 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 the little birds called. Benjamin quickly handed out little umbrellas made of leaves. He was getting pretty good with those leaves. First skirts, then umbrellas. What next? Maybe shirts, neckties? Maybe someday Benjamin would grow up to be a designer. Never leave your home without your Benjamin Stilton. Maybe he was onto something. I am rodent. Hear me squeak. Just then another plop hit my umbrella. It reminded me of the guidebook on the Pirate Islands. It talked about the plop birds on an island called Thumbflop. I know it. Where we are, I cried excitedly. We're on Thumbflop Island. I read about it on the guidebook. The island has plants and edible fruits. Thea grinned. Good work, Jerryberry, she squeaked. I guess it pays to have a book mouse or a brother sometimes. I was about to remind her that my name was not Jerryberry when I remembered something else. I had read a few more interesting books in that guide. Look, in ancient times, pirates brought their gold and riches to pirate islands. Many treasures are buried there. There are also ghosts on the islands. The ghost of the famous pirate, Silverpaw, wanders the beaches on the islands of Thumbflop. His ship was said to have mysterious powers. It could appear and disappear in a blink of an eye. That night, I curled up in a big palm leaf to sleep. It wasn't easy. I kept thinking about the pirates and ghosts and disappearing ships. Don't be such a scaredy mouse, I scolded myself. I sang a little song to give myself courage. I am brave, I am strong, I am rodent, hear me squeak. My cousin Trap mimicked me in a sing-song voice. I am brave, I am strong, I am rodent, hear me snore. You have a leech on your face. The next day, we decided to explore the island. We headed down a long sandy path. It led onto a thick mangrove forest. My paws sank into the damp sand. It was hard to walk. Suddenly, I noticed something odd. Huge holes were opening up in the sand. The holes were filled with gigantic crabs. The pincher-like claws swiped at us as we scampered by. Holy cheese! I cried out. My heart began to race. Sweat rolled down my fur. Do you like crabs? I don't. They always look angry. I hate those razor-sharp claws. And the beady little eyes look so sinister. No one else seemed to be bothered by the crabs. Trap was even humming a silly tune. Just then something slimy and wet hit me in the face. A leech! Geronimo, you have an enormous leech on your face, hollered Trap. I began to see stars. Help! I shrieked. I ripped the wet leech out of my face. Then I stared at it in my paw. But this isn't a leech, I blabbered. It's a wet handkerchief. Trap was jumping up and down all around me, roaring with laughter. How should I should have known. Have I told you my cousins love to play tricks on me? Ha ha ha, you fell for it, Jeremy Stir, he spluttered. You're so easy to fool. It's like taking chili chews from a mouseling. I ran after him. If I catch you, you'll never eat another cheesy chew, I shouted. Oh, how did I get stuck with such an obnoxious mouse for a relative? Bigger than 50 sumo rat wrestlers. Trap was still laughing as he ran down the path. Then he turned to make a face at me. That's when his face went pale. Geronimo, don't move, he stuttered. There's a giant crab behind you. I snorted. You can fool this mouse sometimes, but I'm no cheeseburger. I mean, I wasn't born yesterday. I know someone's pulling my paw. Enough kidding. Trap, I said, laughing. I know there's no giant crab. My cousin's eyes were nearly popping out of his sockets. I had to give it to him. He really did look scared. I wonder if he had been taking acting lessons in his spare time. I'm not kidding, Geronimo. He whispered. Look behind you. I rolled my eyes. I was getting tired of these silly tricks. Still, I turned around. Anyway, see, I told you that when I began. But I didn't get any further. That's because for once Trap wasn't joking. I was face to face with a gigantic, enormous, mega huge crab. I had never seen anything like it. This crab was bigger than 50 sumo rat wrestlers. I remained calm, I told myself. I took a small step backwards, then another. The crab kept his beady eyes trained up on me. Only a few more paw steps and I could dive into the water and I'll be safe there. Suddenly, my cousin sneezed. In a flash, the crab stretched out its claw and lifted me into the air. Help, I yelled. The blood rushed to my furry head. Thea and Benjamin stuck their heads out behind a big rock. Hang on, Geronimo, we'll save you, Thea called. She pulled out a bottle of perfume. She sprayed it in the crab's eyes. The crab blinked, confused. Then it swung me around like in the air like a cat with a new chew toy. It was not a good feeling. "Goodbye, mouse world," I sobbed. "Goodbye, family." Just then Trap hurled a coconut at the crab's head. Benjamin tickled it with a bird's feather. The crab laughed and dropped me. Well, no, it didn't exactly drop me. It hurtled me in the direction of trees. I landed in the middle of a partridge nest. I was surrounded by a slew of open-mouthed tiny birds. "Help!" I screamed. But just as that moment, the mother partridge arrived. She had a big fat worm in her beak. I opened my mouth to scream. But before I could squeak, she dropped the worm in my mouth. I spit it out in disgust. The mother partridge looked insulted. "I'm not a baby bird. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton," I tried to explain. The mother partridge just squawked. Then she pushed me out of the nest. I landed with a thump on my head. "Oh, why couldn't we go to the soft squeak resort?" I moaned. I needed a nice cheese dinner. I needed a good night's rest. I needed an ice pack for the lump on my head. Thump, flop. That night I was so tired I fell right to sleep. At midnight I woke up with a start. Something had woken me up. But what? That's when I heard a very particular sound. Thump, flop. Thump, flop. Thump, flop. It sounded like someone walking, but these were no ordinary paw steps. A picture from the pirate's guide flashed before my eyes. The ghost of Silverpaw. He had one paw and one paw made out of metal. I gulped. Was the ghost of Silverpaw really haunting Thump Flop Island? Benjamin was awake too. He grabbed my paw. "Uncle, maybe it's a ghost," he whispered. I tried to look brave. "Don't worry, my dear nephew," I said in my most confident voice. "I'll take care of it. Now, if only someone could take care of me." I felt faint with fear. Cautiously, I trotted towards the beach. Just as I thought, a very long row of strange paw prints dotted the sand. Who could have left them? A coconut on the head. Right then, I saw a large shadow. "Yum, yummy, yum, yummy, yum, yum," it sang, gnawing at the coconut. I moved closer to get a better look. That's when it hit me. The coconut shell, that is. Yep, the ghost threw the shell right at my head. "Holy cheese, that hurt," I cried out. Then I fainted. When I came to, the ghost was gone. Next night, I heard the ghost shuffling around on the cliffs. Thump, flop, thump, flop, thump, flop. I knew I had to do something, so I crept up behind him. He was gnawing on a roasted crab. I inched closer. Oops, the ghost spotted me. He took aim and launched a crab shell right at me. He hit me right between the eyes. Nice shot. Could this be the ghost of a professional mouseball player? I thought it for over 2 seconds. Then I fainted. The following night I hid behind a sand dune. This time I had a plan. There was no more fainting for this mouse. At the stroke of midnight I heard his paw steps. Thump, flop, thump, flop, thump, flop. This time he was slurping on a mango. This was so strange. I had no idea ghosts like to eat. I wondered if they ate the leftovers from my mega huge fridge. I always blamed Trap when my leftovers mysteriously disappeared, but maybe it was a ghost. Now I finally find out the truth. I was getting excited. After all, I am a newspaper mouse. I like to get the scoop. With a squeak, I jumped up from behind the sand dunes. Paws up, I stammered. Don't move and you won't get hurt. Seconds later, the pit of the mango caught me right between the eyes. I went down like a bowling pin. When I came to, the ghost was leaning over me. His eyes glowed in the moonlight. Could it be? I blinked. Yes, it was. I was staring at the ghost of Rough Rat Ricky, otherwise known as Bouncer. A ghost. The ghost leaned towards me. "Yo, mousy mouse!" he shrieked at the top of his lungs. I shook my head. Even as a ghost, Rough Rat Ricky, aka Bouncer, was still just as loud. I was frightened out of my skull. "Bouncer, you're a ghost!" I squeaked. I opened my eyes really wide. I had never seen a real live ghost before. I had lots of near misses, like when I was trapped in an old mansion, or that appeared to be haunted by cats, or when I was chased through subway tunnels by an oversized phantom. But this was the first time I've ever been snout to snout with an honest to good mouse ghost. My fur stood on end, my knees felt weak. Then I noticed something strange. Bouncer wasn't floating in the air, and you could see through his body. In fact, he looked just as always like he did. Ho. I'm no ghost, mouse, Bouncer snickered. You've been reading too many stories. I watched as he stuffed his face with an entire pineapple. No, a ghost wouldn't eat fruit that way, but a real live Bouncer would. Turns out Bouncer had been living on the other side of the island. He'd sprained his ankle when the plane crashed. He'd made a crutch to help him walk. Guess what his paw steps sounded like? Thump, flop, thump, flop. Oysters on the half shell. That night we celebrated Bouncer's return with a delicious meal. Here's the menu. Oysters on the half shell, crab legs minus the body, tuna out of the water, various fruits. I licked my whiskers. Cheesecake! I was so hungry, my tummy was rumbling in 3 different languages. I was decided to start with the oysters, but when I bit into one, I heard a horrifying crunch. Slimy cheese balls, I shrieked. I had chipped my tooth on something. I spit the nasty object into my paw. I could hardly believe my eyes. There laid in my paw an enormous glittering white pearl. Thea opened the other oysters. Each one contained a pearl. We're rich, he sang. I knew you were good for something, Cousinkins. And that's the end of this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.